You're listening to an Ono Media podcast.
Good morning, and thanks for joining me for Rise and Crime, your morning caffeine hit all about crime. I'm Mama Jules, and I've been asked by many of you to cover the Black Swan Murder Trial. But I've been waiting until we had a verdict, and that happened in the middle of last week. So let's dive into the murder of Doug Benefield and the tumultuous relationship between him and his wife that led to his death in September of 2020. Ashley Byers grew up in Texas, training her body from an early age at the ballet bar. She even dropped out of high school to devote more time to her career. All her hard work returned results. According to her now defunct Facebook page, Ashley danced for many ballet companies that included Ballet Theater of Maryland, the Baltimore Ballet, Sarasota Ballet, Ballet Pensacola, the Brandon Ballet, and the Wilmington Ballet Company. On that Facebook page, she announced that at the end of the 2014-2015 performing season, after dancing professionally for 6 years, she would be retiring from dancing and would instead pursue her professional modeling career. It seems, though, she had more diversified interests than modeling and dancing. She was also a vocal supporter of the Republican Party and was hired to be an office manager in Florida during the Donald Trump campaign in the 2016 election. She was still modeling, but she was paid $3,000 for her work on the campaign. Now, this affiliation with Trump led her to speak at a Trump rally in Illinois leading up to that election in November. During her speech, she told the audience that she was not there to talk about Trump's policies or his campaign or even about his company and his amazing thriving empire that he has built over the years. She said she was instead there to attest to his character and to speak about the man of integrity that she knew him to be. Well, the catalyst that brought Ashley and Doug together was also politics. The two had separately attended a dinner party held at Ben Carson's home in Florida during the 2016 presidential campaign. All right, see, Ben Carson, he'd ended his presidential run and was now supporting Trump for the upcoming November election. And according to Vanity Fair magazine, when Doug, who was 54 years old at the time, met Ashley, the 24-year-old retired ballet dancer, he thought she was the most beautiful and interesting person in the whole world. Doug, who at the time was a former Navy pilot, who was now doing civilian contract work with technology and defense contractors, well, he was intrigued with her knowledge of politics and, of course, with her natural beauty. She was poised due to all that ballet training, and her bright blue eyes reeled Doug in. And Doug had seen some life. He was divorced and also widowed. But those experiences made him confident, and age had made him look a little bit grizzled, maybe a little worn, but it was handsome. Now, both were passionate about politics, and they were also passionate about God and their Second Amendment rights. After that campaign party, Doug sent Ashley a text telling her he loved spending their time together at the party. He even referenced her as Ashley Oakley because, see, at the party, Ashley was concealed carrying a gun that night, and the gun was in her bra, so he referred to her as Ashley Oakley instead of Annie Oakley. Well, by the next night, Ashley, via text, was referring to Doug as my dear. She had already expressed to him that she had thanked God for bringing him into her life. Well, the very next day, after the party, Doug flew to Israel for a week-long business trip. But the nonstop texting and love bombing makes me wonder if Doug got much done during that week of business. They were sending each other heart emojis and Bible verses. They shared their favorite songs. And according to Vanity Fair, she seemed to like classical and country music, and he liked Sinatra and praise music. He even told Ashley he would leave that religious music playing in his home while he traveled because he wanted the angels to have something to listen to while he was gone. Now, 6 days after meeting, and all of this via long-distance texting, Ashley and Doug shared I love yous. They then decided to get married. Doug had a vow of celibacy, which, in my humble opinion, probably escalated the marriage combo. So, some reminders here. They have a 30-year age gap. They apparently have fallen in love over text after meeting at a fancy schmancy campaign party. And they aren't including their families in any of this. And there's one more important fact. Doug has a teenage daughter. Now, Doug and Ashley married in the St. Michael's Episcopal Church in Charleston, West Virginia, just 13 days after they met at the fundraiser. And at least 7 of those days were spent with Doug in Israel and Ashley in America. Now, no guests or family were present for the vows, just Doug's friend. His name's Tripp. He officiated the wedding. And despite her young age, Ashley was ready to be rescued. The ballet world had been tough. She had told Doug she felt abandoned by her parents, and she was also recovering from a failed marriage that she told Doug was full of abuse and manipulation. So here in rides Doug on a white horse, and he rescues the damsel and places a ring on her finger 13 days later. Now, the two committed to starting a family and also starting a business. Doug had already expressed his entrepreneurial spirit to Ashley. He had tried various businesses, most of them unsuccessful. He had a failed TV production company in one metaphorical trash heap, and that thrown away trash included massive amounts of money from friends who acted as donors for that company. And it seems Doug had angered a few wealthy men in his time as well. But undeterred, the two, who barely know each other, remember, well, they hatched their own business venture, the American National Ballet. The idea came about, according to Ashley, after Doug insisted on taking Ashley to a professional ballet performance. She told Vanity Fair it was hard to be on the wrong side of the stage, but that Doug had a passion for ballet, and she knew they could work together on creating a company that was different from all the others. As Ashley moved into Doug's home in Charleston, she became a permanent fixture in Doug's daughter's life. Now, Eva, who was just 15 years old, was still mourning the loss of her mother, who had died months earlier. And remember, Eva's 15 and Ashley is 24. Now, according to Tripp, that's the guy who married Ashley and Doug, well, he said all of this was rocky. Ashley felt like she was competing with Eva for Doug's attention, and she even fretted that Doug would choose Eva over her. Now, the love bombing between the two didn't subside. They shared a journal where they wrote messages back and forth. And these messages are very teen romance-like. They say things like, "Ashley is a part of me. I never want to be without her." And then Ashley writes back that all she wants is to make a happy home. And then she surrounds that script with all of these little hearts. Now, the first year of the marriage was a lot. We've got stepmomming and moving and starting a ballet company and also reversing a vasectomy because Ashley wanted her own child. And it worked. Ashley became pregnant just weeks before the dancers were to arrive for the ballet company. And now seems like a perfect time to tell you about that ballet company because it's got issues. Now, the premise of the company was to court dancers who didn't fit into the traditional dance world. See, dancers who were like maybe racially diverse or dancers who were physically unconventional. They hired Sarah Morosky. Now, she's a stunning 5'10" dancer who didn't fit into the conventional ballet world. A&B also hired Christopher Charles McDaniel. Now, he had spent years as the only Black dancer at the Los Angeles Ballet, and joining a more diverse troupe was exactly what Christopher had been yearning for. A&B was selling hope, and they were also selling wealth, or the idea of wealth. They were telling these dancers that they had state-of-the-art facilities, a luxurious apartment complex for them to stay in that included a practice studio right there at the complex. And the dancers, which ended up being 47 of them, they signed an 8-month contract that included health insurance, which is really unheard of in the ballet world. But missing from the glossy package was a touring schedule or even a performance lineup. All of that was vague. When the dancers arrived, there was no practice studio, and the apartments were cramped, and they were told they would be practicing 5 miles away from the apartments. And that studio space could barely fit 47 dancers. And absent from all of the ballet move-in, all of that first month, was Ashley. She was pregnant and she had taken a leave from her marriage and business to rest at her mother's home in Florida. Okay, you guys, that's like opening a bakery without a baker or an auto repair shop without a mechanic. The dancers were promised by Doug that it'd all be okay. He said he was developing a reality TV show that included them in a dance competition. And the man with no ballet knowledge was also making a dancewear arm of the company that would manufacture more elite point shoes than what was currently available. All right, when the first payday rolled around, dancers were told the pay would be delayed. Then 1 month after the dancers arrived, they were gathered and asked to sign a non-disclosure agreement. 3 days later, half the dancers were fired. Now, all of this going on supposedly without Ashley's knowledge. She went to Facebook, and on A&B's page, she publicly disavowed her support for A&B. You guys, this is her company. Yet she's going to Facebook and saying she doesn't support them anymore. In that post, she said she had heard secondhand about the layoffs and that she did not support the company any further. Now, within 2 months, the company was defunct, and Ashley was redirecting her desires. She told her lawyers that it was in these early stages of the pregnancy that she knew she would be doing this alone. She was committed to being a single mother. In March of 2018, 2 years after their 13-day courtship and marriage, Ashley gave birth to a baby girl. She didn't put Doug's name on the birth certificate. She didn't even inform him that his daughter had been born. And if in reality they were making some sort of long-distance relationship work before now, the marriage was crumbling and in ruins. Over the next 2 years, Ashley filed domestic violence claims with the court. She claimed Doug was psychologically abusive. She even said Doug had tried to poison her with some tea. But those 2 claims, they were dismissed by the courts. One judge even wrote that Ashley's stories didn't hold a scintilla of truth. Well then, on September 27th of 2020, 2 years and 6 months after their daughter was born, Doug was murdered. Ashley was still living with her mother in Manatee County, Florida. And on that evening, Doug had been at the home helping his wife and mother-in-law pack up all their belongings to move to Maryland. The couple, it seemed, was attempting to salvage the marriage and salvage the nuclear family that Ashley had so strongly desired. According to Ashley, a fight ensued. Ashley claimed Doug followed her into the bedroom and that she felt threatened by his presence. So she fired several shots in his direction. One struck Doug in the chest, another in his leg, and a third grazed his right arm and lodged in the wall. Ashley fled the home and ran to a neighbor's home, begging for help and asking for him to call 911. She told that neighbor that she had shot Doug in self-defense. She was even still holding the weapon, clutched in her hand. When first responders arrived, they found Doug clinging to life in the doorway of Ashley's bedroom. Doug was rushed to the hospital, but he died from his injuries shortly after arrival. He was never able to regain consciousness or speak to medical staff. And, at least for police, Ashley's claim of self-defense wasn't checking out. The Manatee County Police released an affidavit stating that Doug did not have any weapons on his person or near him, and that it appeared initially he was facing away from Ashley when the first shots were fired. The affidavit also said Ashley did not have any defensive wounds except for a small scratch, which she had received the day before when she was brushed up against by a sharp edge on a box when they were doing all of that moving. Now, due to the failed abuse claims from the previous 2 years, and the lack of defensive wounds, and the wound entries, and the ongoing custody battle, well, Ashley was arrested and charged with the murder of Doug Benefield. She spent 2 weeks in jail before bonding out. 3 weeks ago, Ashley finally faced a jury of her peers who were tasked with determining if she had killed her husband and if she was going to be found guilty or innocent of second-degree murder. Now, during the trial, all of the past claims of abuse were brought up. Pictures were shown of Ashley with what appears to be a blackened eye. Now, the defense claimed that picture was taken one day after the murder. It was brought up that Doug had previously shot a hole in the ceiling of their shared home when he was angry with Ashley. And in a twist at this trial, and it's one we don't see very often, the accused killer took the stand. Ashley told the 6-person jury that on that evening, Doug was pressuring her. She said he confronted her with the idea that she was trying to leave him permanently by moving to Maryland. Here, I'll play just a bit of that audio of Ashley on the stand.
We ended up in our daughter's bedroom, and he started screaming at me. He said, "Shut the up." He started calling me names. And he said, "I can see what you're doing. You're trying to get me to leave." He said, "I don't have to leave. I can stay and spend the night if I want to because I'm your husband."
At that point, Ashley, how did you feel with respect to your own personal safety?
I was scared.
Did you take any steps to try to avoid anything further?
Yes, I ran to try to leave the house.
And where did you run to?
To the front door.
Did you make it?
No.
Tell us what happened.
He stopped me. He
How?
grabbed me by the hand and he yanked me back. I'm not really sure how he did it, but he spun around so he was in front of me, between me and the door.
So
He said,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
he said, "Where the do you think you're going?"
What was your response? Do you specifically recall? Tell us.
I just blurted it out. I said, "I'm done and you need to leave now."
What was Doug's reaction to that command to leave now?
He said, "You can't leave me."
Then what happens?
He hit me on the side of the head.
Now, Ashley then went on to tell jurors she was scared to death. She was sure that he was going to kill her that night. She testified that she felt trapped. She said when he entered the doorway of her room that his face was red and that his veins were bulging in his neck. She said the way he was looking at her didn't feel like Doug. It felt like Doug wasn't even in there, that his eyes were just black. Now, prosecutors challenged her testimony, saying evidence from that day didn't match her description of events. The assistant DA, Suzanne O'Donnell, told jurors that Ashley didn't have to shoot Doug, that she had an agenda on that late summer evening, and by shooting him, she got exactly what she wanted. That evidence that O'Donnell is referring to is the fact that the fatal shot, the one that entered Doug's chest, well, it actually entered from his side. O'Donnell said that entry wound verified that Doug wasn't approaching or attacking Ashley. He was not even facing her. Now, O'Donnell did admit to jurors that Doug was not an angel, but they said if Doug was dead, it solved Ashley's long-determined goal, and that was to be a single mother who had sole custody of her child. Well, jurors only deliberated for 7 hours before finding Ashley guilty of a lesser crime than second-degree murder. Instead, she was found guilty of manslaughter. She faces up to 30 years in prison when she is sentenced later this year. Her bond was immediately revoked, and she is now in custody of Manatee County. So many victims in this murder. Of course, we've got Doug, who was remembered by his family as a man dedicated to Christ, and he's your primary victim. But we also have Ashley and Doug's daughter, who is now essentially orphaned until her mother is released from prison. And who even knows what that relationship will look like? And then there's Eva, Doug's daughter with Renee. Eva is also an orphan in the traditional sense. Both parents have passed on. All right, remember Renee, Eva's mom, died from an underlying heart condition. And I should note, Doug was out of town when that death occurred, so any scuttlebutt about him being involved in that death just doesn't check out. Eva, who is now 23 years old, well, 2 years ago, she expressed this whole entire situation via her TikTok account. On those TikToks, she explained how awkward it was that she was still mourning her mother's death, and then her dad just brings a woman into her life that is only 9 years older than her. She said Doug and Ashley lied to her at first, but 2 days after their initial meeting, they finally fessed up to already being married. She then talked about how Eva would purposely caused fights between the two of them in order to gain favor with Doug. She told followers that she used to be her father's best friend, but that Ashley put a strain on all of that. She also testified during the trial, and she told jurors that she knew that something was strange when her father did not text her on the morning after his murder. Now, she wasn't aware of the conflict the night before, and also wasn't aware that her father was dead at that time, but she did know that her father always woke before her, and he would send her a text that included good morning and then a Bible verse. But he didn't text her that morning, and she knew her life had changed forever. She said that her uncle called to deliver the devastating news, but before he could even get it out, she had said to him, "He's dead, isn't he?" Now, I discovered that Eva has her own clothing line called Ghost Cowboy. It includes original artwork on t-shirts and sweatshirts, and it's pretty cute. I checked it out. You might want to go there also. Again, that's Ghost Cowboy. But let's get back to the victims, because there's also Doug's family. His cousin Tommy told WFLA that the family was satisfied with the lesser verdict. He said the following: "Even though her story was not corroborated by evidence, it's still confusing to get to that second-degree homicide level. But we're always comfortable that it would at least be manslaughter with a firearm, and we're happy with that result." And now an update to a case out of Las Vegas. Back in November of 2023, 17-year-old Jonathan Lewis Jr. was attacked outside of his high school. That's Rancho High School there in Vegas. But it wasn't a one-on-one fight. It was a mob of teens ranging in age from 13 to 17, and they were attacking Jonathan over some headphones. So let's do some backstory here. I think we could place Jonathan in that "I just don't fit in" faction of high school life. That one where we tend to isolate those who aren't like everyone else. And it's often that faction where harmful and sometimes violent behavior is covered up with this idea that kids are just being kids. Well, this wasn't kids being kids. This was targeted, and it was vicious. Jonathan was a music kid. He loved to draw and paint, and he was kind of a quasi-expert on most genres of music, but most heavily in hip-hop music. Well, earlier in that week, before his death, a group of bullies had stolen wireless earphones from one of Jonathan's friends. Now, this friend was smaller in stature, and the fight wasn't fair for sure. That confrontation led to a planned fight scheduled to be held around the corner from the school in an alley. And as another part of those unwritten rules of high school, the smaller friend, accompanied by Jonathan, well, he showed up for the planned fight, even knowing that it wasn't going to be fair. And then also in today's world, these events are videoed. So the video of this planned fight shows Jonathan taking off his shirt to prepare to battle for his friend. In the video, you can see 9 to 10 males punching and kicking Jonathan before pushing him up against a chain link fence and forcing him to the ground, where the beating continues. When the assault ended, an unconscious Jonathan was carried back to campus by a bystander. He was rushed to the University Medical Center and placed on life support. He died 6 days later from non-survivable head trauma. Now, the video of the event was clearly posted online. This is what happens in today's world. And like I said, part of these unwritten rules of teenage life that basically just suck. You know, kind of like the picture "it didn't happen." Well, that rule was in place here. And that video, well, it led to the arrest of 9 kids, even though a 10th kid could be seen in the carnage. Now, it was initially determined 4 of the 9 would be charged as adults. But late last week, a plea deal changed all of that. On Thursday, 17-year-old Damian Hernandez, 16-year-old Dontrell Beaver, 17-year-old Gianni Robinson, and 16-year-old Trevion Randolph, well, they all pled guilty to involuntary manslaughter. As part of the plea deal, the 4 young men will no longer be part of the adult judicial system and will instead be sentenced in juvenile court. The guilty pleas of the 4 match the guilty pleas of the other 5 who were already working their way through the juvenile court system. The details of the 4 plea deals are still a little vague, but it is clear that if any of the 4 change their minds before sentencing, that change will vacate all of the guilty pleas of the 4. Now, another point that's clear is that all 9 young men will have their records expunged when they turn 21. So essentially, it will be as if nothing happened when they turn 21. Now, Melissa Reddy, that's Jonathan's mother, she told KSNV of Las Vegas that she was, quote, dumbfounded and, quote, in shock by the plea agreement. She said that she had heard from the Clark County District Attorney's Office that the teens were going to plead guilty to murder in the adult court system. Now, if she's correct, this plea deal is not even close to the one explained to her. She told that news station that she wasn't present for the plea hearing and that she found out about the juvenile court portion when reporters broke the news to her. Now, the district attorney's office released a statement about the plea deal and specifically about Jonathan's mother's concerns. That statement reads in part, while the district attorney's office acknowledges the pain the victim's mother is going through as she mourns the loss of her son, the negotiation was accurately conveyed to her last week prior to this court proceeding, and that conversation was witnessed by multiple DA personnel. All right, he then gave his reasoning for the change. He said that the state determined the juvenile court was best equipped to punish the defendants for their heinous conduct, while also attempting to rehabilitate them. Lawyers for the 2 of the 4 teens said they will be arguing for time served when it comes to the sentencing portion. I will keep you updated on how this turns out. All right, that's your Monday episode of Rise and Crime. Thank you so much for joining me here on Rise and Crime. I truly enjoy being part of your day. And if you're loving this content, I ask that you share it with a friend. And at Ono Media, we always love 5-star reviews and positive comments on all of our content. You can like and follow us on social media and YouTube. And make sure you join me again next Thursday for more morning crime news. I'm Mama Jules, and keep safe out there.